Right, this problem is one of the easiest counter-currencies that there is. It's really quite a straightforward one. So let's have a wee look at the problem. Scientists are interested in studying the possible effects of global warming. Devices are placed at various locations to record temperatures. Each device takes 1,000 temperature readings per day. Some sample readings are shown below. It lists the readings there under the word temperature. It's showing you that the temperatures are floating point. A program has been written to perform some analysis on the data collected. The program must find how many of the 1,000 readings are above 0 and less than 10. Use pseudocode to write an algorithm which would determine the number of readings in this range. So I want to know how many there are. So that's how we know we've got a count occurrence. Please remember, when you get a count occurrence, you're always going to have a variable called total. So I'm going to initialise my variables now. So remember, you will initialise any inputs. We don't have any. You will initialise any running totals. I've just done that. Well, I've just wrote it down, sorry. So I'm writing my total, and I'm going to write that's a P and an O. Don't know what happened there. I'm going to write that's a P and an O. It's a process and output. It's calculation and it's output. I then get my temperature, because that's my array. It doesn't actually state in here the name of the array, but I'm looking at what's written above it, temperature. Let's go with that. I'm going to put my square brackets. This time I'm going to write 1,000 in, because I know there's 1,000 temperatures. I'm showing clearly that I know what my array is. We're obviously going to be going through the array, so there's going to be a counter, but it doesn't say anything there about a counter. We never ever initialise our counter. We don't have to put it there because it's only live for as long as the for statement's running, so we're quite happy to go on now, and let's do our initialise. So we don't initialise our array, we don't initialise our counter. The only variable here for me to initialise is my total. So I'm going to write total equals, and my total is a running total, so it's an integer, so it's equal to 0. There is no input. All I'm doing is comparing what I've got with 0. Sorry, making sure it's above 0, making sure it's less than 10, and then keeping my running total. So I don't have to do that, but I don't have an input. So I've done my initialise, I should do my input, and then I go down to my output. So what is it I'm calculating, therefore I'm displaying? Look, I've written it down, my total. I'm going to output my total, I'm going to display my total. So I'm going to write display total. So that's me. I've done my initialise, I've done my display, I've managed to fabulously get 2 marks, believe it or not, just for those 2 lines. 2 out of 5, I feel quite happy about that. Right, so let's go back to what we know. We initialise, we input, we have a for, we have an if, we do something, we end our if, we end our for, then we output. So I'm now into my for statement. So I can use either of my for statements because I know that there's 1,000, so I could actually write for counter equals 0 to 999, or I can say for each counter in temperature. I'm always going to go with the second one, it makes me happy, and I'm just going to write it out. Remember, I'm going to put my square brackets at the end again so that we know that it is in fact an array. And we know that we need to have an end, but I'll leave that out for when I'm then putting them together. So that's me, I've done my for. So now I need to do my if statement. So what is it I'm comparing? I want to know if my reading is above 0 and if my reading is less than 10. So remember, when you write your if statement, you always start it saying if temperature, my array, and then my element of my array, which is my counter, and this time you're looking for equal to, more than, or less than something. So if it's above 0, so if it's greater than 0, and it tells you and less than 10, so I'm just going to write and. I cannot write less than 10, that will not work. Okay, your program, when you run it, it evaluates this and it gives you true or false. So it doesn't store temperature counter is greater than 0, it stores either true or false. Then it evaluates this. So if I just then write less than 10, it doesn't have a clue what's less than 10. You have got to tell the computer what is less than 10. So you know that it's the temperature again, and checking to see if that is less than 10. So if my temperature at counter is more than 0 and my temperature at counter is less than 10, then. So our final line is what we want to do. Well, what is it we want to do? We want a running total. So total is equal to 0 just now. So what do I want to do to total? Well, every time this happens, I just want to add 1 to total. So there's a few ways I can write it. I can write add 1 to total. I quite like that one, you can tell. Or you can write total equals total plus 1. Or the one that I do use most often, which is increment total. And that just means add 1 to it. Any of them will do. So I'll go with the one I always use. At this point, believe it or not, we have finished this. I have a mark for here, 1 mark for here, so let's make it 2, 3, 4, and then there's my 5. That's how it's made up. So now we put it into order. Initialize, input. We don't have an input. So we then have our 4. And just bring it up. And then I have my if. So bring it up and paste it. And then I have my do something. Again, bring it up. Paste it. I didn't write them out, but remember, never ever forget your end ifs. Please don't forget your end ifs. And then finally, I've got my display total. So at this point, what I would do is now just go along and write my 1. I would never write my numbers to begin with, because you end up making a mistake. You end up having to change them because you've missed out a line. And that there, guys, is how you get the 5 marks in this exam question.